It's 7 o'clock, so we'll get started. Town of Farragut Visual Resources Review Board for September 2019. So the first order or item on the agenda is to approve the minutes from the August 27th meeting. Do we have any discussion around the minutes as presented?
Make a motion, we approve.
All right, with no discussion, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, moving down to the ground-mounted sign applications. We have one that's the Dental Company tenant panel on 11117 Kingston Pike, near the Premier Eye Care Center.
Premier Eye Care Center is just before you get to Admiral on Kingston Pike. I'm sure y'all have been by there. There's actually two options that were included in your packet and on the PowerPoint. The first option has some very small lettering on the lower part of the sign panel that really isn't essential to the sign, but it's certainly not legible either, so it really doesn't benefit the entity there. So they did propose a second option that basically consumed more of the tenant space panel, which would be probably more useful for them because you can actually read everything. Let me see if I can turn the lights off. I think you might be able to see it a little better. Yeah, maybe. The only thing I would suggest in looking at this is maybe darkening the blue line to make some of that pop out from the tenant panel to make it more visible, more legible. But other than that, I think that particular option is preferable to that one, which again consumes part of their tenant panel with something that really isn't legible. So it's kind of taking up some of their valuable space. They may want to consider using the darker colors that they have in that one and apply it to this.
Add the black trim around.
Might make it more legible for them.
So
Yeah.
the letters are at their max? They can't enlarge that at all?
Well, I
The
think
letters?
that tooth is part of their logo.
Okay.
So they really
that a
can't do
tooth?
much beyond
Okay.
that. Yeah, that's a tooth, actually.
Well, Mark,
Okay.
when you go back and forth between them, isn't the royal blue color number down there the same? So it looks a little bit different in the picture, but it's using the same actual color. It says royal blue PMS,
Yeah, I guess
whatever.
it is. It just looks a
So I
little
wonder if
darker.
it's just maybe not in this
It may
picture.
be, yeah. If it's
know.
darker like that, I think it would probably be fine.
What is underneath that? I couldn't read it on mine, and I can't read it on.
It's,
It says general and implant dentistry.
yeah.
Okay.
And Marty, I believe the reason it looks darker is because in the this first one that's up, they have it completely outlined, the logo. And
Right, they have the
lettering
black
completely
outline.
outlined with the black, which
True,
does
yeah.
set it off and allow it for more
Blue in
visibility.
the blue in the image is not the same color as the blue down here.
Right.
It's much lighter, actually. If you
is.
put
Yeah, it
those
doesn't
side by
look
side.
right.
I think outlining everything would be a
Much better.
benefit to them.
Yes.
Yeah, I would suggest that as a recommendation certainly from the staff on
Switch to
that.
the other one again, please.
Yeah. 'Cause it makes it kind of pop out a little better.
Yeah. I wish we could have them side by side.
Well, since they presented these two alternates, were they fine with the or the two options? Were they fine with the alternate?
Yeah, I think
Option.
so. Again, all we're trying to do is just make them have an effective tenant panel, for their business. And I think the second option really allows them to use more of the space for signage that's more visible.
I'm not crazy about either
So
one of them.
the royal blue that's like to the left actually looks darker than the blue is showing up on that white background, even outlined or not.
Yeah.
I think the black outline actually makes it harder to read to me, because distracting with that line underneath it, like the Knoxville, you can't read, that actually
See,
looks clear to
I
me.
like this first one better.
But that blue on the left, like that royal blue, when they look at the color
Yeah.
on there, actually looks darker than what it's showing up in this picture. And I know sometimes, once they get on the sign, it looks completely different. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that blue that they used is really lighter than that royal blue that they're
Yeah, it's hard to
projecting.
say. Yeah, I don't. Again, these images like this are always a little tricky because they, you know, like when it gets installed, sometimes it's a little off from what it appeared to look like whenever it was presented.
Could we just suggest that maybe it's a
Deeper
color
blue,
to
a
make it more
little
visible?
darker to pop off of
If
the
it's-
background a little better.
I mean,
Yeah.
if it's not a
Yeah,
branded
we're-
color.
Yeah, if they need an answer to the question of the comparison,
Right.
would they be okay with using that first one as the dental company and leaving off the implant or underneath?
No, I don't like
and
that
just
one at
doing
all.
it? Take that
hard to
first
read.
dental.
I don't like that
take
one at all. I like the other one
Yeah, but use
myself.
those darker
Yeah.
colors in this sign, in the second sign,
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Just darken up that.
with the black
With the-
outline, which makes it pop more. I
I
can't
don't
see
like
that.
that black outline. I don't.
I don't know. I mean, I think if they were to darken it a little bit, it would it would give it better contrast with the background, and I think that would benefit them because you'd have a more legible panel for them.
It would look more-
So we can, I mean, I can
See,
make
yeah,
that as a
exactly.
suggestion to the sign company and, you know, that we think it would be more legible and more effective for them if they were to darken that up a little bit.
What if they just did the tooth a different, like the Premier, look what they did over there. If they did the tooth in that sort of kind of color, would that make it pop better?
I think anything darker is going to
Yeah.
have better contrast because it has a light background to it.
Yeah, I think our
So-
role is
Like a
to,
tooth to me.
It doesn't
readability is
look
our role, not redesigning color on the logo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree it needs to be darker, yes, but I wouldn't go switching up anything they've done here. I wouldn't switch up any
Wouldn't?
colors.
Just maybe darken
No, I mean, I
it
just
up.
need, it needs to be royal. I just don't think the example matches the true color,
Yeah.
honestly.
So either,
Blue, and that's a light blue, that's not
Yeah.
royal blue.
it doesn't look as dark as the royal blue.
Well, it
So-
appears they're putting the slate gray is going to be the background, right? It's not going to be a white
Yeah,
background.
it's the
It's a
same
gray.
background as the rest of the sign. Yeah, it's a gray, slate gray.
Go back to the other one again.
That's contributing to,
See, I don't
you
like
know,
the
the
other one
ability
at
to
all.
see it.
I think that's just too much.
I would
It's
go
hard
back,
to-
I like the first one.
The other one, right?
Well, that's the first one. Yeah.
You
Well,
like the
second,
one,
you like the one,
that's the alternate
the
version.
alternate. Switch
Right.
it to
If you
the
go
other
back
one.
The
to-
alternate
The
is
This one
original
that says
they-
alternate
That
oh,
one.
the
original one.
Right. This is the original.
And then that's
Close with
the
that. We
alternate.
tried to do
alternate that
this
the
a little
staff
bit with
had
that first one.
recommended because they're using all of their tenant space for their signage.
Which is good, but
So if I
I would
understand-
recommend it, this option with just either confirming that they actually use royal blue or just darken up, you know, to give it better contrast with the background, however they wanted.
I think
Or
if
even
they did
black,
like that little
and
up
then
at the
let
top,
the
this and
tooth
that at
be
the
in the
bottom, like the blue, that would
and the
make that
white
pop
or
better too. What's happening is
Or
these
just
two
outline that in.
are so close to
And
that.
give it better contrast, I think would be fine.
But ultimately, I think this is still a good, readable, legible sign.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's legible. I just think if it was a little darker, it'd be a little bit better.
Well, I think confirming the color is the right thing to do because we have a color scale down here and what's on the screen doesn't appear to be the same. So obviously, I think that we should confirm what it's going to be. All right, is there any further discussion on the dental company sign? Okay, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve confirming the color.
Can't hear you. I'm
No.
sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve confirming the color.
And you're approving
Which one?
the alternate
The
design.
alternate,
Okay. A motion to approve the alternate design while confirming the color. We have a second on the motion.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'm opposed.
All right, one opposed. Moving down to the next item on the agenda, it's the landscape plans, and this will be for the proposed Top Golf, which will be located out on Outlet Drive.
Okay, this is a pretty involved landscape plan that Mike Burson's put together here. It's, I'm sure y'all have heard about the Top Golf. We actually made some ordinance amendments and rezoned some properties out there on Outlet Drive to accommodate this type of regional entertainment venue, I guess, for lack of a better way to describe it. And now this is the landscape plan that will be part of their site plan submittal that will be going to the Planning Commission in October. They have stormwater detention basins that will be adjacent to Outlet Drive. Let me see if I can go to those. So it's a little bit unusual. They're going to have to fill a fair amount of the site, and there'll be some retaining walls that will be constructed to basically define the detention basins. There's 3 detention basins along Outlet Drive, and then as you work your way into the property, then you have the building, which is that shaded image there on the right side of the screen. That's the building, and then all the landscaping you can see in front of the building, and then in the parking lot area. It's pretty substantial, and then they've got some additional landscaping that they've added around the periphery. That's above and beyond what is required by our landscape requirements. So I think there was just a couple of minor comments. One thing that we always say whenever the landscape plan comes before the site plan approval is that, obviously any changes that are made to the site plan that could affect landscaping will need to be picked up as part of the landscape plan revisions. And then the other comments were included in your packet. And those included verifying that all plan sheets have been revised and comply with town standards. Let's see, basically just tying it to the what changes may occur to the site plan that would affect landscaping is mainly what's left. We re-reviewed the plan that was submitted, and it looked like they had corrected everything that we initially indicated that needed to be corrected, and so we would recommend approval of the landscape plan subject to it, again, reflecting any changes that may occur to the site plan. We've met with the engineering firm that did the site plan, and we had a pre-submittal meeting, so we don't really anticipate there being a whole lot of comments on the site plan, even though it's a very substantial project. We kind of went through all the major items on the front end before they submitted anything, and Mike and I have talked about the landscaping on this project as well. So if y'all have any questions or want to go through anything in more detail, Mike can certainly answer specific questions if you have any.
Just a couple of things on this slide that you're on right now.
Visibility.
Yeah, the visibility. Yeah. I know you've got the visibility triangles there, but if you're pulling out there and looking to your right at the shrubs and trees that are down that aisle, even though it's outside of the triangle, that could still impede your vision out through there. And it's kind of hard for me to read what all's there, but how big will those become? And can that impede vision of, you know, when it's in a car, not in a bigger vehicle, but a
Yeah.
smaller vehicle?
Yeah. The curb line actually is pretty far out.
Okay.
It doesn't, it's not, I don't believe labeled on this, but it's the topmost line. Well, the very topmost line is just the limit of the page, but then the second line is the curb line. So you can see when you actually pull out, those trees at maturity should be back behind your field of view. So it shouldn't be an issue with visibility. I noticed that too when I looked at the plan, and then I looked at the curb line, and I felt pretty comfortable that you know what he was proposing there would not, you know, grow into to create a visibility obstruction. Obviously, the Nellie Stevens hollies are evergreen, and
Get very tall, do they not? I mean, that was my concern.
they'll get 15 to 20 feet
Yeah.
high and maybe
And
15
this is
feet
10.
wide potentially. They're a little wider than the Foster holly. That might be something to think about, is using maybe a more conical
Yes.
shaped evergreen. I don't know if you know,
That'd be
something
fine.
that the Foster holly is going to be a little bit more narrow. That might be something to think about there. But again, I'm comfortable where he's showing the plant material there, not creating any visibility issues. Those dimensions are supposed to reflect the tree's sizes at maturity. So those canopies should reflect the general extent of the canopy of those trees when they're mature.
Okay.
It says here, if I'm reading it correctly, 7 to 8 feet high, but they definitely.
Well, that's at planting. That's what he's doing. That's the size that they're going to install, which is a very big Nellie
Yeah.
Stevens holly.
And so they are definitely going to get higher than.
Well, yeah, they'll get, you know, like I say, they could get
They can-
15 to 20 feet high.
And that's not going to obstruct the.
Well, again, when you look at where the actual curb line is, it's a little bit deceiving because there's a lot of lines in there, but that topmost line is your curb line, and it's pretty, you know, pretty far north of where the trees are shown. I don't have my
And
little
they're
draw
back
thing
further down,
tonight,
so
but I
that would be. I love the Nellies. They're great. I like the trees, and they hold up well as far as, you know, diseases and all of that stuff. I was just concerned about this, basically the same thing. So you don't think
Yeah.
that would be
I like Nellie Stevens. Yeah, they're good.
they're
A good
for
tree.
this
The
area.
Foster's going to be a little more narrow.
Yeah.
That might be an option if you're concerned about that.
it's. I mean,
Some
it's a
arborvitaes
the
are
landscaper,
pretty
and-
narrow too.
but that was the only concern I had. And if you
Mike,
think it
do you
works,
have
then
any?
it's going to work.
You want to speak to that, Mike, or am I correct with the curb line and everything? You might want to come over to the
Sorry.
mic if you don't mind.
All the circles of the trees and shrubs are drawn at a reasonably mature height, size and spread, so they'll get to be about that size. The hollies that you're talking about, the ones like Nellie R's or the Burfords when we use, and we even show them the same many times the same size as the Foster, but those are about a 15-foot diameter spread, and you can see on the plan that none of them really protrude past the property line.
Okay.
So, and the only difference is selecting one or the other. Sometimes one's a little lusher, darker green, like the Burfords or the Nellie are, and the Fosters are a little more
Narrow,
lighter and so on. So we were just trying to get some oomph out there.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Hey, Mark, I have a question about the sign. So will the
Yeah.
landscaping for the sign have to come back through if we approve this or not?
It would be part of the sign review,
Okay.
that and any lighting that they might be doing, especially if it's external. It's something that we've talked about with the sign committee, is looking at signage early on and trying to think about, you know, the landscaping in relation to the sign and making sure that it's coordinated and it doesn't create, you know, obstructions of view as material
'Cause there is
matures.
some elevation change right there as
Yeah.
well, right? So that sign may have some,
It would be
elevation on it?
elevated, yes, yeah,
That would be smart to do.
yeah,
Or-
yeah, it would be
just looking at some
elevated.
of that plant material may be taller, but if it's elevated anyway, it'll,
Yeah, it's something to look at because there is material that's shown in front of the sign face and, that could create a visibility problem. And then, of course, the material on Outlet Drive, could as well. But I think, that's going to be a type of use that's, a destination. You're not just going to drive down Outlet Drive and spot that and say, "Well, I'm going to pull in there."
see it anyway.
I mean, that's probably going to be something that's pretty, easy to find. They're going to have a lot of wall signage on this building, on the building, 3 different elevations.
You're going to see it for miles,
You are.
Yeah.
From the interstate, yeah.
especially, yeah.
Just the facility and the system itself is going to be pretty visible because they have very tall poles with netting and
I did that they're taking it over.
that.
And Mark,
So-
is this current plan, is it in the current area that's a field on Outlet?
Yes.
No
it is.
wooded area, it's in an open field?
Yeah,
area.
there's some tree cover around the periphery, but
Gotcha.
there's nothing in the.
I want to ask a question. I'm not sure the proper procedure. Is the signing, I mean, is the landscaping going to be done before the signing is put in, or are they done at the same time? Because I'd hate to see things planted there that doesn't make sense because of this covering the sign. I'm sure you must be working on that.
They haven't submitted a sign for review yet, have they?
So you're not going to be planting anything there.
Yeah, we've looked at some of the signs that they typically have, and they're pretty hefty. It is somewhat up the hill, but the other constraints there's a requirement around the detention ponds for plantings. And so, I guess if you ask an owner, they'd say, well, we don't want any trees out front, we want to just be able to see the sign. But to meet that requirement around the detention, we have to have them. But there are gaps that you will see that sign that's up the hill.
Well, I'm not so concerned about what's around the detention base. I'm concerned with the hollies that are right around the sign area, that area.
They're up behind the sign.
Okay, well, it looks like there's some on the front and back, on both sides there, if I'm reading this right.
Those are Japanese hollies.
Right.
They're low.
Yeah,
I
they're-
don't know anything about, okay.
So we're okay with that.
The Nellies are the ones but they're farther
I mean,
back.
Okay.
the maiden grass can get tall, but you can just keep that trimmed
Keep it
down.
Trimmed.
Yeah.
Okay.
But is there a way, I'm like you, I really would like for them to do the sign, or you coordinate something that before, just like, we don't want it to be, we want it all to work and blend together
Right.
to where that everything, the sign really does need, like Brittany said,
Well, it's certainly something that
yeah, because
we need to
want
make.
it all to coordinate.
Right. That's a good premise to go by. And we've submitted the landscape plans at this time, and we could wait in theory. But the problem with that is it sets back the grading
Right.
permit for a month. Now, here's what I would do, and Mark, just keep this online, is that
Do
when the
that.
sign comes in, if there's a conflict, all this, none of this is going to be installed at any time. And you might even put in there, subject to landscaping around the sign, subject to
Great, yeah.
Right.
final sign design.
I don't want to hold you up, but at the same time, I don't want it to be an issue down the road. It's less expensive too, because for everybody, if you would coordinate, but then like you said, start your project and somehow.
Or you could add a note to the plan too, I guess, and reference,
said.
that in that area, just point to that and say that final landscaping around sign.
Sort of be the, maybe,
We can even have the landscaping resubmitted,
Yeah.
that section with the sign.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So right now, it's based on what we know about it.
you up, but that's perfect. Very good suggestion.
Can we make that a subject too?
Yeah, we can. Yep. So I've got the coordinating the landscaping around the sign and also with any changes that may occur to the site plan. Make sure they update the landscape plan accordingly. Anything else that you all have a question about or comment?
Very good. I'm excited. Can't wait. I do too.
I think a lot of people are going to be excited to have it come to the town. It will be a destination. It'll bring a number of people in from other areas, so should be good for the town. Is there any further discussion on this landscape plan? All right, do we have a motion?
Motion to approve, subject to the, Mark?
Site plan.
The site plan.
Updating the landscape plan to reflect any changes that may occur as a result of changes to the site
Fine.
plan. And then the sign.
And the sign plan,
And then the sign coming back
right.
to you all
So
All
two,
right.
two
to
subject twos.
coordinate the, yep,
Yeah, there will be two
coordinate the
subject twos.
landscape plan.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, the last thing on our agenda right now says other business, which is a committee update on the new sign ordinance committee.
Well, we have our fourth meeting tomorrow
What time?
at 5. And the last meeting we had, we talked about sign provisions for freestanding, mostly single-use type buildings like JCPenney or, O.R.N.L. Bank and those kind of things. And then tomorrow, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and then we're going to start getting into multiple tenant buildings and multiple building complexes and how the sign provisions differ. They're very similar to freestanding sign provisions, but there are some differences. And one of the things we'll talk about that I know y'all had to look at, normally you don't look at wall signs, but occasionally Bart or myself will bring a wall sign to you all to get your thoughts on whether it's compatible or consistent with other signs in the development. So that's something that I think I like having compatibility and consistency, as long as there's some flexibility in there. And what we've really kind of applied in that context is to allow people to have more latitude with logos, but if there's a certain theme established otherwise with the signs, that they try to be consistent so that you don't end up with a shopping center with a kind of a hodgepodge of all different styles of signs, and it just doesn't have kind of a symmetry to it. Kind of like some of our older centers like Village Green. I mean, there's all kinds of different styles in there. And so it's a little challenging to deal with those older centers, and that's something we'll talk about a little bit tomorrow as well, is, should the owner try to get with the town and establish a theme or a type of sign that they want to see in their development, and then as signs get replaced, try to, get more consistency even in those older shopping centers. So stuff like that. We're working our way through the ordinance. We're probably halfway through most of it. So, and we'll obviously be coming to you all as we get further along with a more finalized draft and get your all's thoughts on it and take it on to the planning commission, see what they think. So that's about it right now with that. I don't know if y'all have any questions or anything you.
So how many more meetings will be planned after this, or sort of what's the schedule on this right now?
Well, the goal is to have some kind of draft by the end of the year. That's what we set out, and I think that's doable.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it should be doable. Now, whether it's a draft that anyone's going to like is a whole other. I want it to be more very easy to understand, very easy to administer. and, flexible. And, just something that I think we've made lists and kind of mental notes over the years of things that if we were to overhaul the ordinance, what we maybe should try to look at more closely, like the consistency question, the height of ground mounted signs, because I know some of these multiple tenant signs, because of the 6-foot height cap on those, if you got a whole bunch of tenants, it ends up being just a big box and it really doesn't look very well. So we may consider, allowing for a taller sign to get more of that base and a more kind of an architectural presence on the sign, to make it look better. We're not talking about 15 feet, but maybe go up to 8, 10 feet potentially. So, things like that.
A lot of times the monument signs can't be seen from the road because of cars. The height of a car can block it. I think that's another reason to add a couple extra feet. I think it would help with the visibility.
Yeah, and
considerably.
something we've talked about just kind of informally is just as part of a site plan or whatever landscape plan submittal is maybe just a sign plan submittal, that they kind of think through on the front end how they envision the signage to be applied in their development. Then that kind of will drive things like your landscaping,
Exactly.
your, the situation of the parking lot in relation to the building and, and those kind of things. To have them think about signage early on. Things are going to change and it's never going to be exactly the way you initially envisioned it, but at least they're, giving that some thought early in the process instead of trying to impose signage on a already constructed project where you've identified some issues that you could have maybe avoided on the front end.
Are you talking about the lighting also? When
Yeah,
you're doing
lighting
the
is,
lighting
yeah,
important too
lighting,
because of-
utilities, the visibility, lines of sight with landscaping. We want to have our parking lots landscaped. I mean, I think that's very important to the town. But it doesn't mean that you can't arrange the plant materials so that you have lines of sight into the development so someone can see the wall signs or the monument sign. And then just looking at the building placement in relation to the rest of the site. If you move the building up closer to the road, you have a lot of signage benefits by doing that.
Most people think with the signs that just to do plants, but I like the way, maybe most of you don't, but Weigel's has that little pot. Have you noticed that pot to where it's almost like a flower pot that's upside? I think that's neat to where it.
Oh,
it-
yeah.
it
Yeah, that's
doesn't-
good.
And
Yeah.
most people just automatically think, okay, we have to do, plants and.
Yeah.
So those are some kind of things to think about too.
Yeah.
That
Landscape,
a special
art kind of,
rock
yeah.
or something like that to
Yeah.
where it's a part of the landscape.
Yeah.
The plants instead of the plants.
Yeah,
Or
rock
not
materials.
instead of, but
Yeah.
added.
Yeah, so that's some of the things we're kind of talking about, trying to clean up, hopefully. So we'll be back to you sometime in the near future with some more information, I guess, on that.
Mark, has there been any, community involvement in it at all?
Yeah, that's a good
yet?
point.
Well, we have representatives from a wide range of backgrounds, which hopefully reflects different perspectives on signage. But we haven't actually had a public community meeting on it yet. We will. All that is going to.
But they're still welcome, correct, at the meeting now?
Oh,
if they
yeah,
want
yeah.
to.
They're all public meetings, yeah.
I just
Y'all
didn't know
can
if anybody
come. I mean, anybody can come to it.
To kind of like input. They basically
Yeah,
have input
absolutely.
whenever there's a problem.
Yeah, yeah.
It's,
I've found in doing ordinance preparation over the years, you have a better you got better input if you got something that people can react to.
Actually see.
Yeah.
And to-
Otherwise, it's just kind of everybody's
They don't.
all over the place. If you give them something to react to, then they can give you some good feedback. It may be total crap, and that's good. That's feedback. You can make some
Work from that.
adjustments. You know, so I think that's a better approach. So that's what we're trying to do is get a draft put together, point out some of the key elements in that, and get some feedback on that.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the update, Mark. So
Okay.
if
Thank
that's
you all.
it, meeting adjourned.
All right.
You're just dying for that, right?
You guys have no way